So today I'll be wrapping up the Nutrition 101 series and I'll be finishing it off with fats. So I think a lot of people are quite, knowledgeable in terms of what constitutes as a fat or not, but I think it's still important that we all are on the same page, and hopefully I can answer a few questions that you may have when it comes to, whether you should or shouldn't be eating fats, or should or shouldn't be cooking with certain fats, and so forth. So first of all, fat is really important. We do need fat in the diet. So there is definitely, I think, two camps of people where it's like no fat, we shouldn't be eating fat, and then of course we have the Banting or keto group that's in love with fat. So if we can get somewhere in the middle, that would be great. So that's usually your Mediterranean style, your let's call it Mediterranean or more balanced types of lifestyles where we do incorporate fat into the diet, but it's not necessarily the star of the diet or the black sheep of the diet. So a balance is always the best, or moderation is always the best approach. Okay, but fat isn't necessarily just fat. We need to be looking at the different types of fats and be mindful of what are we incorporating into our diet. Okay, so first of all, we can actually classify the fats that we consume into one of three groups. So the first group is our unsaturated fat. So unsaturated fat, like I think many people know, is of course our healthier types of fat. So that's typically fats that have been shown to be health promoting, in other words, cardiovascular health promoting, like heart happy fats and so forth. It provides essential fatty acids like omega-3, omega-6, which is super, super important. And of course our is fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K. So that is why it is really important to incorporate fat into your diet. You don't want to be excluding it completely, but you do want to try and get majority of your fat from unsaturated fat sources. So what would be unsaturated fat sources? In general, it's your plant-based sources. So things like avocado, nuts, seeds, olives, olive oil, canola or sunflower oil for an example as well. Typically unsaturated oils are not a solid at room temperature, so they're liquid at room temperature, where saturated fats are usually a solid. So you'll often see if you've made like a casserole dish or mince or something and you let it cool down, there's often I would say disgusting piece or layer of fat that's actually solidified on top of it, and that's because saturated fats are more solid at room temperature. Okay, but back to unsaturated fats. We definitely want to be consuming majority of our fat from unsaturated fat sources. So think plant sources. However, we do have one plant source that is a saturated fat, and that is coconut oil. And I think many people know this by now and have heard of coconut oil and all of its many benefits and miracles that it claims to have. Okay, so saturated fats typically come from our animal sources. Think skin of the chicken, fat on the meat, and so forth. So there's a lot of controversy and a lot of debate around saturated fat and whether it's really bad or is it not. And the research kind of still shows that it is something that we don't want to be over consuming in our diet, because it is still linked with heart disease and so forth. Okay, especially when taken in combination with your carbohydrates that are more refined or higher sugar carbs and so forth. So the combination is really detrimental. So we definitely want to be consuming complex carbohydrates and also unsaturated fats, because that's the best we can do. So saturated fats, we definitely want to try and limit in our diet. So the recommendation is about 7% of your total fat intake should be saturated fat, so that's quite little. So in general, the easiest way to do that is to choose leaner cuts of meat, or to remove the fat, or at least not eat the fat. If you are buying a choppy, try not to eat the fat of the lamb chop, for example. Just trying to choose leaner or white types of meats that are less, or that are lower in fat, especially. And then, of course, our last group is trans fats. Okay, so trans fats is a very interesting group because it's a very dangerous group, and we should actually be trying to avoid it at all costs. However, it is quite difficult because it's usually in our nicer types of foods. So trans fats often come from unsaturated fats that have been heated or processed in a way, because these unsaturated fats are unstable due to the fact that they're unsaturated. So they still have areas where bonds can form, and when they heat it, the bonds actually become unstable, and the bonds change from a cis bond to a trans bond, and that's when we see trans fats. So Think when you are cooking with certain oils or deep frying foods or heavily processed things, that's often where we find our trans fats. So trans fats have been directly linked with heart disease and all the bad stuff that we want to try and avoid. So we definitely do want to limit the amount, even if we can avoid intake of trans fats. However, like I said, it can be a bit difficult. So where you can, try to go for the grilled option, try not to go for the deep fried option as much. And when you are cooking your food at home, try to go for a good quality oil that's going to be stable at that temperatures that you're heating it at. So that's also the point that I want to make. Is a question that I get asked quite a lot about what oil should I be cooking with, or should I be cooking with butter rather, or coconut oil instead of olive oil, because of the fact that we're scared of it changing into a trans fat, which is the bad fat. So when it comes down to what oil to use, I would definitely still recommend olive oil, not necessarily extra virgin olive oil, just normal olive oil, or avocado oil is also a good option. It might be a little bit more expensive, but those two are still your best options. They're still great and good quality oils and fats, and they are still stable at higher temperatures. And then I would really rarely recommend that you deep fry anything at home. So typically shallow frying or just using a bit of olive oil or avocado oil should be completely fine, because even though butter or coconut oil is stable at a higher temperature, so it's not going to change into a trans bond, the fat quality is still not the best. So the cons actually outweigh the benefits of cooking with it. So if you are going to use coconut oil or butter, by all means do it. Just use it in really small quantities if you can. And on that note, I'd still rather recommend using butter than margarine, for example, because the margarine being heavily processed. So that's the main thing. Is, okay, again, it just comes back to balance and just trying to balance it out, having things in moderation and just using common sense actually at the end of the day. But so that's it on the three types of fats. So unsaturated fats are best sources. We want to try and really capitalize on them, and then saturated fat, try to not go too heavy on that, and then trans fats, try and avoid as much as we can. The last note that I want to talk about on fat is the fact that a lot of people may be a bit scared of using fat, or maybe overusing fat in their diet, mainly because of all the amazing benefits that unsaturated fats provide. I mean, because of all the essential nutrients it actually gives to the body. Now, it's really important to look at the calorie content of fat. So I've mentioned this in many videos before, but remember that 1 gram of fat is equal to 9 calories, whereas 1 gram of protein or 1 gram of carbs only 4 calories. So when you are consuming fat, you are definitely consuming an energy dense food or ingredient, for example. So if you are feeling like, yes, but I'm eating healthy, I'm only eating unsaturated fats, and I'm having my avocado, and I'm having my nut butter, and whatever the case may be, and that's great, you're getting all the benefits, all the nutrients. However, your calorie content might still be too high when it comes to, if your goal may be to lose fat. So be mindful of the portion sizes when it comes to fats. Fat portion sizes are really small. If you think about nuts, it's about 10 to 15 nuts. It's a really tiny handful, or a tablespoon of peanut butter, for example. So, or a teaspoon of oil, or a teaspoon of butter. That's a portion. So really be careful with the amount of fat that you use, especially if your goal is to lose fat. If your goal is to gain weight, then yes, of course, you can maybe increase the amount of healthy fats in your diet to really increase the calorie content of your meals without really bulking it up much. But just be mindful of that calorie density when it comes to fat. Even though it's healthy, it's very high in calories, and it might be contributing to you maybe struggling to lose weight. So the moral of the story is, I'm not saying that you should avoid fat. We know that fat's important. You just need to be careful with the portion sizes, and don't believe that this handful of nuts here and the handful of nuts there is not going to make a difference. It definitely will make a difference. So try to stick to the portion sizes as we recommend them on the eating plans, as that will really give you a guide and an idea as to how to incorporate fat in a good way into your diet, and to make sure that you reach your goal, whatever your goal might be. So that's it from me for today. If you have any questions, let us know, and I'll see you in the next one.